Guys, and welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything. My name is Pete, and welcome back to the little segment on this channel that we like to call Legacy Reviews. If you've not been by the channel before, or you've never seen this segment, welcome. This is a segment where I go over the first 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows, the original trilogy in sequential order, so that being Duel Monsters GX and finally 5Ds, and I give my thoughts each and every week on the episodes. I could do that because I've never seen the episodes. I have no idea what's going to happen in these shows. I don't know the outcomes. I don't know anything that's going to happen. I barely know the characters. I'm learning everything as I go, and so hopefully that's enjoyable for you to listen to, and it's very, very fun for me to record and kind of react to in my own way. This week, starting off with Duel Monsters, so I'll be right back. Alright guys, so this is episode 20 of Duel Monsters to kick us off this week. This is called Three Gods Combined, Gate Guardian. So we'll get into the title of the episode and the actual duel, which is the kind of the A storyline, the meat of what is going on. But first I want to touch on the B storyline, which is all about Seto Kaiba, and it's what actually kicks off the episode right after we get the preview of what happened last week. We pick up with Seto Kaiba, and he's reminiscing about Mokuba and is still kind of slowly walking to Pegasus's castle. I guess it's a long journey there, and he's stopped in the woods by a former associate. I assume this associate used to work for him. He seems to know him pretty well. He calls him by name, and I'm imagining that the associate kind of just changed sides because it's like a situation where you're trying to bet on the winning horse, and he sees Pegasus and Industrial Illusions, the company that is trying to take over Kaiba Corporation. He sees that as an inevitability problem. He sees that as an inevitability probably. That is the way it's going to go, and he has now betrayed Seto Kaiba, which Seto is not happy with, as you can imagine, as any of us would feel with the sting of betrayal. But the show, what I love in Duel Monsters, right, because there really is no rules, there's a little bit more of a dark edge to it, is when are we going to see in a current Yu-Gi-Oh!, certainly not 7s, but even in something darker like VRAINS, where we're going to see a character, a minor antagonist, hold a gun to one of our main characters' heads. Like, you're never going to see anything like that in today's day and age, and I like that in the old, early 2000s of this show, it doesn't hold back. And he was about to kill Seto Kaiba because he gives him the, kind of the ultimatum that, hey, walk with me to Pegasus's castle or I'm going to end you. And Seto's like, all right, try me. And he literally was going to murder Seto Kaiba in the woods. Once again, I don't know if that is how that's supposed to go because Pegasus wants Kaiba Boy to get there. That's supposed to go because Pegasus wants Kaiba Boy to get there. And all these player killers are trying to kill Yugi. They're trying to kill Kaiba, all these agents of Pegasus. I don't know if that's necessarily what Pegasus wants, but maybe he'd be happy if it kind of works out like that. And how does Kaiba get out of the situation, you ask? Well, he kind of flicks a card backwards, and I'm sure you guys in the comments could tell me down below what the actual card was, because I don't know it, I don't recognize it. Flicks it right into the trigger of the gun, of the weapon, of the handgun, and stops it from firing, stops the pin from firing. So it's just incredibly ridiculous. In a classic Kaiba fashion, he's calm, cool, collected, and he's just kind of complaining about how a valuable card was damaged. And you know what? We knew it with Kaiba, right? He's a badass character. We could see that he can hold his own, and once again he proves it here that even when he throws the gun away in hand-to-hand combat, he makes quick work of a guy that you would imagine is older than him, that has probably some skills as kind of a meat puppet to lead him to Mokuba in Pegasus's castle. The next time we see Seto is kind of the end of the episode. The guard inevitably, this man here that he knows, inevitably tricks him, which we had to expect. He gets him to step on a plate there that triggers the alarm in the basement of Pegasus's castle. And Pegasus, he says to, one of his main cronies that reports to him, that's been reporting to him, as he's sitting there watching on the cameras, sipping. I mean, how much wine does Pegasus drink? I mean, how is this man not drunk like all day long? But that's just a side note. But he goes down, and the main part of it is he wants his guards to leave Kaiba alone, to let it go through. We've seen that earlier here in the series, and he's going to go down for a confrontation to meet Kaiba Boy, as he says. So I'm very much looking forward to that next episode. Okay, now on to the A storyline. That's what we jump back to. That's what your storyline. That's what we jump back to. That's what you're here for, is the duel. And man, this is turning into a fantastic duel. Maybe my favorite duel so far of Duel Monsters here in episode 20. I will say right off the bat, did not expect it to be more than 2 parts. I don't know if it's more than 3 parts, but we're definitely getting a 3-part episode duel, which was something I was not expecting right off the top here in the first 20 episodes. And I kind of like it just because the environment right now, the tag duels, dealing with 4 characters, the setting of what is going on, I love the setup that they're having right now. So to kick off the duel, they give us a little bit of a kind of a recap of what has been happening. And we knew we were going to get 2 cards that had to appear, right? And so we get them right off the top. Jinochi comes out with Flame Swordsman, puts him right on the field. And I didn't know that, the level was the amount of spaces that you could move. But I thought you were handicapped to, hey, if it's a level 5 monster with Flame Swordsman, puts him right on the field. And I didn't know that, the level was the amount of spaces that you could move. But I thought you were handicapped to, hey, if it's a level 5 monster, it has to move 5 spaces. No, I guess that's the max that it can move, but you could actually limit how many spaces it is. And I like that in this episode we see really on the control panel they have when they're on the dual stand, is you could actually click where in the maze that they're going to go, obviously following the normal path of the labyrinth. But I like those little touches there that they add. And then the other character, the other dual monster that we knew was going to get on the field, Dark Magician or Black Magician, gets on the field on Yugi's side. And I love that we're fortifying the defenses. Our heroes, our protagonists, they're trying to gain all of their strong monsters from Flame Swordsman or a Black Magician or a Celtic Guardian, all on similar spaces in the same area to fortify kind of their defense, because they knew they were going to have more stuff that was kind of, dirty cheating playing. And that's what Honda and Anzu are calling out on the sidelines as well. And they know this is their territory. They know what they need to do. They know how to kind of manipulate Yugi and Jinochi and make them fall prey towards their traps. And they get that immediately when they had a trap card activate. It kind of, as soon as, Axe Raider goes on one of the spaces, they have one of their monsters come up, immediately kill him, take down his attack, and overpower him completely. And their strategy was something that was pointing out last episode. It's a very fortified and strong strategy, is, hey, let's go after the weaker opponent in a tag duel. And they figured that out in this episode. They really kind of make it's funny because they go after Jinochi, right? They make do on their promise of going after the weaker character, but by the end of this episode, Yugi is, out of the 4 players here in this weaker character, but by the end of this episode, Yugi is, out of the 4 players here in this match, has the lowest life points. So I'm not saying that Yugi is the weakest, because he's, I think, by far the strongest out of these 4 characters, but at the moment, you could argue that Jinochi is actually carrying the team, and especially in this episode, I thought this was a turning point here. This might be his best dueling that we've seen so far. So the brothers put Dungeon Worm on the field, which, even before you see it in action, it's going to be one of these BS monsters as well that is somehow going to cheat the board. And sure as shit, that is exactly what happens later, that it's able to dig underground and doesn't have to go by any of kind of the normal logic of following the board spaces based on your level. But Yugi brings back a couple cards that we've seen him use before early on against some of the player killers, and one of them being Mystic Box, right? So he combines that with Dark Magician, and it's an idea of, I guess it switches places, right? So it teleports Dark Magician to a place on the board that he wants to match up with Jinochi's monsters, but it also skewers one of the Labyrinth Brothers monsters, and so they think he's actually sacrificing his own monster, and the brothers are kind of, I like that they have different personalities, even though they work well together, the brothers, and one of them thinks, oh, why are you sacrificing your own monster, and the other one's like, no, there's something more to that, and the monster that just Jinochi's monster just fell prey to is quickly dispatched by Yugi. So it looks like it is a turning point in the match, but it's very short-lived, because we have that moment there where he's able to destroy the trap monster that the brothers had. Now Dark Magician is able to come back and smack a Labyrinth Tank, which was a very powerful card, and things were looking up at the explanation, and I guess it doesn't have the same effect for me in this moment, right? Because I seen this monster in GX. I seen how powerful Gate Guardian was of combining the 3 gods that represent, lightning and wind and water. But still seeing the origins of it was cool. I believe, actually, now thinking about it, now watching it, it triggered a distant memory in my childhood, I don't know, maybe hippocampus, wherever, where I had a friend that had this toy of Gate Guardian, and you could take each piece off and you can combine them together, and his arms and legs moved and all that. So it triggered that memory that I had long since forgotten while I was watching that episode. So a bit of nostalgia, which was, it's always good when you're reviewing something like this. So there's pieces here and there of Duel Monsters, very, very minimal pieces that trigger kind of the deep recesses of my mind. But for the most part, I don't know anything. They're kind of the deep recesses of my mind. But for the most part, I don't know anything. I mean, I don't remember anything that was happening, and I've never watched this episode. But I remember that toy. I remember him having that toy in his room. But the brothers' strategy goes to what you would expect, is that they want to get the 3 gods on the field, and it's a matter of just drawing them. And I like that the gods are separated between the 2 decks, so it's really, a tag team style that they have to work together to get this on the field. And Yugi kind of comments that the presence of the field of the overall match of the duel has changed, where it feels like, there's not anything different going on except those coffins that are encasing these gods that they say, but Yugi doesn't really know kind of what is going on, and Jinoshi definitely doesn't know what is going on. And the brothers, while they're waiting their turn to get all 3 gods on the field, they get 2 kind of right off the bat. They kind of go after and weaken the defenses of our protagonist, and that's where the dungeon worm comes into play. Just destroys poor Celtic Guardian, completely cheats the board. Honda and Anzu are crying about it on the sidelines and just going after them, and I get it. And that's where it triggers Yugi to bring back the second reminiscent kind of card that he needed that we seen early in the show, and that is Magical Hats. He brings in Magical Hats and he puts Flame Swordsman and Dark Magician underneath it, and now you have a 2 in 4 chance. You have a 50% chance here of hitting one of those monsters. However, if you hit Dark Magician with your Dungeon Worm, you're going to be completely wiped out, because Dark Magician is going to have more attack points than the Worm. So it's a dangerous gamble that Yugi is going, but I love the Magical Hats because I like the game of chance that we're playing inside of a duel. And then we see this cool card drop on the field in Monster Tamer. So I don't know if this is a card that's still, I don't know how it would work. Kind of looks like, I don't know if anyone's a wrestling fan out there, but it looked a little bit like a Macho Man, a little bit of Randy Savage, the card kind of looks like. And he's able to, because the one brother actually had Dungeon Worms, so the other brother, understandably, right, by the rules, would not be able to use that monster. However, since he summoned the Monster Tamer, he can now, for that turn, take control of the Dungeon Worm. Plus, you would figure there's going to be some kind of buff, and he adds 600 attack. So now, the issue is, if he hits a Flame Swordsman, definitely is going to beat it. If he hits a Dark Magician, now his attack points are higher. The Dungeon Worm comes up empty, nothing happens. Now what are we going to do? And you think in that moment that it's going to naturally fall to Yugi, right? He's going to come up with something. And Jinochi actually is the one that he pops out Flame Swordsman. He reveals where it is. And everyone, including Yugi, is like, what are you doing? Well, he had a spell card to combine that raises their tribute, any fire tribute monster by 700 attack points. So now he can raise his Flame Swordsman over the dungeon. It has this, dual monsters style effect where it can go after the Dungeon Worm. It has 300 more attack, but it could also attack it while it's underground with its flames. So it doesn't make a lot of sense there, because at first I'm thinking, wait, did it have more attack? It actually did, but you weren't supposed to be able to attack the monster if you can't see it on the field. Well, apparently you equip this spell card and you can do that. So that worked out, and it's a great move by Jinochi, and further backs up my point that I said earlier of this was kind of his episode. He really impressed, and I think this was by far his finest dueling moment so far on the show. We get to the inevitable part, right, where the inevitable part we knew the brothers had to get the 3 gods. Like, that had to happen. The Gate Guardian has to be at the end of 3 gods. Like, that had to happen. The Gate Guardian has to be at the end of the labyrinth. So even if you get out of it, how, as Bakura says, how are you going to get past this? This thing is defending the doors. And now it's going to be down to our team coming together and being able to, prevail, keep cool heads, and kind of pull this one out. And the episode kind of ends with Gate Guardian going to attack Flame Swordsman. Jinochi doesn't know what to do. He's kind of asking Yugi, and that's how our episode ends. I did want to comment on one other point that I forgot from our storyline B. There's a flashback scene where the henchman is kind of antagonizing Kaiba about his relationship with his brother, with Mokuba. And it's a flashback scene of them talking about they'll always be together. I guess because their parents died young, they ended up going to an orphanage. And then we see another kid getting picked up. And I guess they were never chosen. They were never properly adopted. So they were probably in cycle for quite some time. And you could see how that can harden an individual like Seto Kaiba. So I could be off on that, but it gave me a little bit sympathy to his character going forward. But guys, that's kind of my thoughts here on episode 20 of Duel Monsters. I'm going to switch over to GX, so I'll be right back. Alright guys, welcome back to the GX side of the review. This is GX episode 20, The Maiden in Love is Strong deck. Wow, this is an interesting one here at GX, and you know what, it's weird to say that because I feel like I say that every week of like, what is GX, right? That's kind of become my tagline, but this particularly is an episode that, I don't know if it's, I'm not going to go as far to say that it's inappropriate, but let's say it hasn't aged quite like fine wine. There's some fascinating parts we're going to talk about above it just being overall weird, but there's some nuggets in there that I do enjoy. So we kick, and it's Judai in the cafeteria with Hayato and Sho. They're there with all of the red dorm, and a new student walks in, is introduced by the teacher that I always forget his name. You can let me know down below. And the one with the cat. And he comes in, and immediately Judai assumes that the student is here because they got, low test scores, right? They're in the lowest rung on the bar here on the totem pole for the dorms in red, as opposed to, a raw yellow or, obelisk blue. And it's just because that student is getting transferred in halfway during the year is why they were automatically put in this dorm. The student's name is Ray, actually really high, fantastic scores. So Judai embarrasses himself a little bit, but the overall idea of him being welcoming and to anyone that comes by is what makes his character so great and what makes him a great person. He's always trying to bring everyone together and realize what's that person's potential and what's the best in them, that they can, just provide to the world. And he's just a welcoming guy, and I really appreciate that about him, even if he's a little bit awkward with it. But immediately Hayato makes a comment about this new student, Ray, and says, wow, he's as pretty as a girl. Because here, of course, we have the dorm separated, girls on one side and the boys, the males, are in another side. So you, right off the bat, as soon as you're watching, you go, okay, well, that's a girl. Clearly this is not going to be a guy. That's going to be some girl in disguise. You know where that's going. And they hinted at it with that very obvious line out there. But Judai's actions actually cause him that, they had nowhere to put Ray inside, going to Cypher Red here. So they're like, well, we'll just put him in your dorm since you guys seem to be hitting it off. So now they're shoving 4 people into this dorm. It looks like there's a mattress on the floor. So there's no, I guess, structure for when a transfer student happens. They're just stuck here. But that's not where this is when we get back to the dorm. That's where it starts. And so Judai is like, yeah, let's hit up the bath together, right? Totally, innocent. You assume, obviously they're kids. Judai or so is what, about 14, 15-ish, but it's inappropriate as the audience there if you haven't caught on yet, because Ray's a girl, so we're not going to have them mix together, obviously, and be showering together. We already seen Sho get in trouble for spying on Asuka and them quite a few episodes ago, and then they thought it was Judai and all that stuff happening. But Judai makes an interesting line, and I'm sure this will be used in the review. He says, men can't truly bond until they get naked and wash each other's back. So I'm like, that's just an interesting line that the original Japanese just chose to put in there, and I assume they mean no harm by that, but it's just a fascinating thing. And Ray, you know, kind of just skates through and it's like, oh, I have a cold, I can't be there. And we cut to one of those funny GX scenes where we see Sho and Hai. They said, you know, they're washing each other's back, and then there's an animal there. One of them, I think, is a monkey, I believe. Like, just what happens at Duel Academy? Like, it's just the weirdest place in the world. I think there's a bear and a seal, I think it is. Like what is happening in this show? But whatever. So when we cut back inside and we go actually to school, I was actually surprised. You know, the principal gets on screen and he talks about Duel Academy North. I did not expect there actually to be a North and South Duel Academy. I guess I was under the impression that it was just one school kind of for the country, and I guess there's multiple schools. It reminds me of a few animes where they kind of split up the school in multiple directions in different cities, and that's kind of the vibes I was getting here. Just didn't expect that. And they talk about how, you know, Rio was the representative that defeated North's kind of representative last time. Who's it going to be the last time? Who's it going to be this year? And Judai proclaims that it should be him, which it probably ultimately will be him, even though Sho believes it should be his older brother in Rio once again, which, I mean, you can't argue with that. He's a fantastic duelist that we've seen so far. They make, you know, they come out of the meeting there, and they make a little bit of a reference to the egg bread from a few episodes ago, which that was nice to see that we're paying attention to the pointless episodes that we dealt with like 3 or 4 episodes ago with the Tarzan look-alike thing, whatever the hell that was. But they're immediately interested in the character Ray, and Judai goes off and follows her. She ends up, or we think she's a he at this point, breaks into Rio's dorm looking into his deck. And we learn why that is the case later, but Judai follows, and you knew as soon as Judai followed, he was going to be the one that got caught. You knew Ray was going to get caught, and that's exactly what ends up happening. Of course, when Judai gets caught, he's immediately taken in by, I'm going to call them Rio's thugs, even though he's immediately taken in by, I'm going to call them Rio's thugs, even though they're other Obelisk Blue students. It's just people that clearly worship him, and he's taken in, and he looks like he's going to end up getting expelled. And we cut back to the scene that goes where there's the hairpiece on the floor there, and Rio immediately notices that because he's a very, observant kind of guy, and he gets Judai off the hook because he knows there's something afoot here. He knows that someone else was in this room beside Judai, and we saw that in the reveal scene where Judai found out that Ray wasn't a guy, it was a girl, which was the worst kept secret that we had so far in the episode. And when we go back further into the episode, I feel like every scene in this show deals with some kind of beach or ocean shot on the dock. And we get Rio actually going to Asuka, which is something that she even comments that, yeah, I don't literally see you come to me for advice all the time. They wanted to discuss, includes her brother that we've seen since the kind of the beginning of her arc back in episode 3 or 4 or so. But maybe it's alluding to something more. I don't know. If you guys, if I'm forgetting something, please let me know down below here. But Judai does what Judai does, and he ends up finding Ray on the shore and challenges her to a duel because that's how you reveal all the truths of yourself cannot be hidden in a duel. You're going to find out everything you want to know without the person actually telling a detail of the situation. So it seems like it's going to be something serious that is going to be revealed of why Ray is there, but ultimately we'll get to that part. It's certainly not that. And we have a small crowd forming, as they always do in Sho and Hayato, and Rio and Asuka are all watching there on the cliffside, just looking down at Ray going against Judai. Now this is where things get incredibly more strange in this episode, because she has, a Maiden more strange in this episode because she has, a Maiden in Love deck, right? And so it's exactly what it sounds like. The card she pulls out at first is Maiden in Love, but it turns Judai's monster, his male monster characters, literally in love. So I guess Judai's like spirit connection, and because they're his monsters, he's connected to the deck. He can see what's going on with them and how odd his monsters are acting, and no one else can. Like, Hayato is very, intelligent in the situation. He has a little bit of intuition. He's saying, hey, is there something here that Judai is seeing that we're not seeing? And Sho automatically thinks that, his big bro there is just acting odd completely, and then is also in love with every duel monster that is mildly attractive, which is a whole nother strange aspect of Sho's character that I've become used to. But it's Wing Karibo that comes in and alerts him to this first thing of Judai, alerts Judai to the monsters kind of falling for Ray's monsters, and that's kind of the idea for deck. She takes them, she kind of puts a love counter on them, basically, and then the monsters, Judai's monsters, are able to fight for her and actually damage Judai. The thing is that Maiden in Love isn't able to be destroyed actually in battle, but she's still also taking the damage. You know, Ray is still taking the life points there. It's just that she kind of had Judai on the ropes, whittling him down over and over with this technique. So it's kind of reckless, but it proves to be pretty successful. I will say that her dueling style does provide some funny bits in this episode, because every time one of Judai's monsters there, Sparkman or Avion or anyone comes in and they're transferred over to the Maiden side, to Ray's side, it's always this, like, there's this love pattern going on between the monsters that only Ray and Judai could see, and they're so upset, Judai's monsters, when they actually hurt the Maiden. Like, pairs Avion and the Maiden together and boosts both of their attack points. Well, it takes, I think, the attack points, the difference in the attack points, and adds them to Maiden. So there's just like these little love funny moments that I enjoy, and I will give out props to Asuka in this one, because there's a couple lines where she realizes the situation that is going on, and she sees that she has a little bit of intuition of why Ray actually came here. And I think Rio is kind of privy to that information. He's catching on, even though he's a little bit slow, but Asuka is definitely the first one out in understanding that. And she talks about how Judai doesn't understand the finer points of love between men and women, and Kaiser makes this interesting line where it's a little bit, I think, outdated, but I see where he was going for, where he's saying, like, oh, you know, history has proven that even one beautiful girl can bring a rune to a country. And I know the point he's getting at. A girl can bring a rune to a country. And I know the point he's getting at. But as Asuka points out, he's really just trying to cover up for his own misunderstandings about love and not understanding maybe the finer points of women in this case. And Asuka kind of shuts him down immediately and goes, yeah, even the Kaiser doesn't really understand exactly what is going on, which plays even more important when we get the reveal there at the end of the episode. So Judai, he realizes that, hey, I can't use my male monsters to defeat the Maiden. I need to use a female monster. So he brings out Burstronix, and that logic, I guess, works because she kind of has a couple funny moments where she calls over Avion and Sparkman of, like, what are you two doing? You know, you're kind of ridiculous, just as Ray, you know, fully kind of gets rid of her kind of wig, kind of bandana that she had on, holding her hair. She's fully accepting that this is who she is, full in the flesh in front of everyone, even though it was the worst kept secret we knew. Flesh in front of everyone, even though it was the worst kept secret we knew what was going on there. The Judai strategy of using a female monster works. He's able to, you know, fuse it with polymerization into Flame Wingman with Avion and Brustronix, and that was the defeat of Ray. And then we really get into why Ray is here, right? So there's some blushing going on there, and she snuck into Rio's room at the beginning of the episode because she has an old-fashioned crush on the man, and we assume Rio is, I don't know, let's say 16, 17, right? He's a third-year student at the school. Yeah, it kind of becomes an issue here when people are making jokes about having an innocent crush, because Ray is a fifth grader, so that exactly doesn't work. So, you know, it can happen sometimes that maybe a kid has a crush on a older individual, male or female, but you have to treat it exactly such as Rio did. That's kind of the only thing that you could be doing in this situation. But Asuka makes another point here. She goes, well, unlike heroes in a duel, real men can't be won over with a wink or a blown kiss. So she was saying that, I guess, this innocent flirtation wouldn't work on an actual man, which I feel like is a little bit of a shot to Judai at the end of the episode, but she does make a beautiful thing saying that, you know, love like this duel, it blossoms between, you know, real feelings of two actual people connecting with each other. So there was some kernels in this episode that I appreciated. It was just, the execution of it was strange, down to even the stereotype of Rei getting jealous of Asuka and her kind of cowering in the corner with Judai because she was maybe almost seeing Asuka as a rival to Ryo's affection. So it's strange. As she leaves and she says she's going to come back next year, now her new fascination is with Judai, Ryo's affection. So it's strange. As she leaves and she says she's going to come back next year, now her new fascination is with Judai, and calls him Darling Judai and not Ryo, and they all think it's hilarious, and they leave him on the shore saying, yeah, you gotta stay there, the old thing of when she's leaving on a boat, you have to stay there and watch her off till you can't see her anymore on the horizon. So poor Judai getting screwed once again, but that's kind of how it goes. So a weird episode, maybe a little bit outdated, but let me know what you guys think down below, because it was definitely a strange watch, and that is something for GX. We're gonna finish up this review with 5Ds, so I'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the final part of the review this week. This is 5Ds, episode 20, Uncompromisable Feelings. My mission is with my hometown. Now, obviously, that is a reference to Bommer that we get to in this episode, but we'll talk more about that. Starting at the beginning in the episode, we pick up right where we left off with... Lua and Luca and the situation that the two of them went through last week, where Luca was in the, kind of spirit world, was having kind of a hypnotizing style duel with Professor Frank. Very creepy vibes, we got that. And we talked about that two-parter duel that concluded last week. And we pick up with them in the stands where Lua is the one that doesn't remember calling out her name or anything that happened, and Luca recognizes that. And of course, the, annoying announcer guy comes on screen, sometimes in his Japanese words, but they sound like English, and he sets up the matchups for the semifinal, which will ultimately end up whoever the winner is, will face Jack for kind of the title, the championship here, the Duel Cup. But we know that the Fortune Cup is all a bunch of BS. This is all Godwin's creation. The fans just don't know that. And the semifinal matchups go as follows. We're going to have Yusei and Bommer go against each other first, and then Aki in the first round matchup, and we saw Bommer easily kind of win that one. But this, I would say, was the Bommer episode. We learned a lot about that character, and I definitely feel for him and understand his motivations by the end. But at the beginning, Lua's main thing, right, is, hey, if Yusei is going against Bommer here, if I could find out what his D-wheel, what Bommer's D-wheel looks like, then that could give Yusei some kind of advantage. So that kind of becomes the little tiny B storyline that mixes back in. That's exactly, what his mission is, of what he wants to entail. And we learn a lot about missions in this episode, and we really focus on Bommer's mission, right? So we see a scene that he has with Godwin and the assistant about, how Godwin asks him in a very, I won't say predatorial, but in a very tension-filled way, in a very evil, kind of undertones of it, of saying, how long has it been, since you've been away from home? And he's like, tension-filled way, in a very evil, kind of undertones of it, of saying, how long has it been, since you've been away from home? And he's like, a year and 16 days, something like that. So the fact that he knows specifically how long he has been gone shows how much he misses home. And it's revealed that Bommer is doing all of this, is working for Godwin and everything, because Godwin promised that he would rebuild the village, his hometown, Bommer's hometown, if he's able to do these missions and get the signer out of Yusei, get the signer out of what they thought was going to be Luca. That is the mission that Bommer is there. And even though he doesn't necessarily agree with it, he doesn't necessarily trust Godwin, he has to think about his people back home, and that is his mission. That's something noble. That's something I can respect, and I did like that little bit of additive to his character in this episode. And this, as I said, really was the Bommer episode, right? Like, we learned a lot about this character, and right after he has that scene with Godwin, which, has his little, original, kind of soundtrack, his OST in the background, his little theme music there for Godwin. He's just a sinister son of a bitch. And I love him, and I love villains, but, you really want to punch him in the face, but you're understanding a little bit more of what Bommer fights for. But we get more into that as the episode goes on, because he later right after that, he has a confrontation with Jack in the hallway, and Jack says a really kind of a little bit meta thing, right? Like, he's like, yeah, you're no way you're going to be able to defeat Yusei. It's a waste of everybody's time, including my own. I'm the only one that's going to be able to beat him. Now, ultimately, it's a little meta because we know that's going to be true, right? Like, I can't see any way that Yusei is going to lose to Bommer here. He has to end up facing Jack, right? That's how this Fortune Cup has to end. To me, there's no other way around that. But the fact that they called that out and that they had this little confrontation in the hallway where Jack, I mean, the character that we've seen, he is a quote-unquote king, right? And we know he's being manipulated. Now, what is his real purpose here? Godwin's real purpose, and what is Jack's real purpose in this situation? He's not been able to figure that out. And in the meantime, he has to put on this character. Now, I don't mean fully he's putting on the character, because I think Jack is very full of himself on his own right. But he is playing a character of the king that he has to uphold, really for the public maintenance, department, and for himself. That's really what he believes. And Bommer, he sees right through that shit. He calls him literally a pitiful king because he doesn't realize, and even calls out, Jack, you don't even realize what your purpose is here, really what you're doing. And I don't think that really implies that that Bommer knows Jack's true purpose and what Godwin wants to do, but he knows there's something up there. And I think the fact that he's seeing through Jack, that you're going to sit here, you're going to act like that, all this is a fortune cup, all this is a dueling cup. All this is a dueling cup. And I especially know as Bommer, that there's something more here. And he goes, a mission, Bommer has a mission that's not going to be stopped, and it's not going to be stopped by someone like you. And I thought that was a really moment there where even Jack went to punch him in the face, and Bommer easily blocks it, doesn't retaliate, calm, cool, collected, and it makes Jack look like the one that's a little unhinged. Jack looks like the one that is lost. And Bommer is the more respectable character in that moment. That's something that I didn't really see them doing, and it added more to my respect as this episode went on. We cut back to Lua, and Lua is, going into the garage, and, he's looking for Bommer's D-wheel. He does find it, but he thinks it's a monster. I mean, remember, he is a child. And when that happens, he kind of, I guess, gets scared, and I don't know if that caused him to pass out or because he couldn't get out when the alarm sounded. He kind of just gave up, thought it was a ghost, and kind of went to gave up, thought it was a ghost, and kind of went to sleep. And that alerts Bommer to come kind of check on the garage, because we have Luca and Yusei back at the apartment. They're sitting there eating hamburgers. It's Lua's favorite food. They're wondering where he's been, and they decide to go out and look for him. And you could see Yusei throughout this episode, as he's done in the show, he's very protective of these twins, right? I mean, he's protective of a lot of people, but he's really grown a liking to them, and almost an older brother figure of wanting to protect them, of wanting them to succeed, of fixing their dual discs so they can fit them more. That's just the type of Yusei, like the person that Yusei is, but I think he's really grown an attachment to them, and he particularly has an interest because he knows Luca has the same tattoo mark that he does, and that's also why he wants to stick around. As, kind of Yusei and Luca are looking for Lua, Bommer kind of comes out of the shadows, looks a little suspicious, is carrying it. They actually put both of them to bed. It's a really nice conversation that they have where I think Bommer wants to get to know Yusei and wants to know more about why he's fighting, and they're both actually fighting for the same reason. They take a little walk outside on the beautiful kind of the pool that's outside with the beautiful stars, above them, even though they can't even see the stars, but it's a beautiful night. And Bommer explains, listen, this is where I found Lua, this is what he was doing. I know you didn't order him to do that. I know you're not a sneaky person. That's not the type of person you are. And that is true, because even later Yusei has a chance to get some information for Lua, and he doesn't take it because he's a straight up kind of honest guy, and that's what we respect about him. But Bommer also comments that, hey, Lua did that because, he looks up to you, and it much reminds me of how my younger brother and sister back home, they looked up to me. That's the example that you have to set for these kids. And we get this idea, we get this flashback of Bommer later, where I guess it seems to imply that his younger brother and sister were killed. Now, were they killed in some kind of, accident that happened, like, hey, it was a forest fire, something happened, or was it something more sinister by me? You have to wonder, right? Was it something more sinister by Godwin and the people at the public health department, the maintenance department here, did they cause that to get Bomber, knowing the duelist caliber he was, to get him to the city to do their bidding? It's a wonder there, right? Because is the hometown have to be rebuilt because a massive fire happened? So I wonder how that connection goes there. And Bomber makes a comment about how you can't see the stars here, and that's just because that's a comment on pollution and the natural smog that happens in these major cities when they industrialize. And so that got me thinking, like, hey, that means that Bomber has to live in some kind of place, some town outside of the city, right? Somewhere that's probably in the woods, some kind of place, some town outside of the city, right? Somewhere that's probably in the wilderness, that's beautiful, that more appreciates nature. And then he makes the comment about his people descend from the Inca, and I would imagine what he's saying is the Inca Empire, right? He says, came from the other side of the world, descended from the Inca Empire. Those were the people that were the descendants of the people who served the people of the stars, which we believe is the signers, or at least Iliaster believes. And we know that the Inca Empire, if you look it up, and I remember from, my history classes, that's a South American, like Western South America area. So we're talking like a Chile, an Argentina, maybe like a Peru, kind of Bolivia area there. So we imagine that is where his people come from, and that is where the empire used to be, and I would imagine it is the same case here in the Yu-Gi-Oh universe. And he talks to Yusei about, hey, like, listen, this is what's happening. This is the signers are here. Godwin believes. He changes the subject quickly and he goes, hey, you have to understand, listen, we both came from poor backgrounds. My village is suffering just like probably you do in Satellite over there. And the director promised he'll rebuild the village. And him just skating the question, right there that Bomber doesn't trust or believe in anything that Godwin says, but he has to believe in the one thing, just on the kind of the innocence, I guess you could even say, just the naivete that, hey, he's gonna rebuild this. I have to stick and believe that this promise is gonna happen, that maybe my siblings' deaths weren't in vain if that happened accidentally or because of Godwin, and he's the only man to have the resources. And Bomber, after this great conversation that they have, great character development for both of them, especially Bomber, he goes, I respect you, basically, but know that I'm gonna win. Like, that's how this is gonna go. I have to win. I appreciate that you're a duelist with honor, but this is gonna be for me to wrap. Know that I'm gonna win. Like, that's how this is gonna go. I have to win. I appreciate that you're a duelist with honor, but this is gonna be for me to wrap up. And then the duel kind of became secondary here at the end of the episode, where, we get a little bit of a taste of it. We know we're going to finish it most likely next episode. We see the ridiculous size of Bomber's D-Wheel. Make jokes how you want in the comments below, but Yusei even makes a comment that, just because your D-Wheel is bigger doesn't mean, it makes you more of a skilled duelist. So there was a little bit of a maybe innuendo implied there, but it's fitting. I mean, let's be honest though, Bomber is a gigantic guy, so it makes sense that he has a bigger D-Wheel, that he couldn't fit in one of those, kind of smaller style ones, but it didn't need to be that obnoxiously big. But that's the anime style for it. I love it. It's like, a guy riding, a big Harley coming in, and that's kind of what I equate it to. And the duel itself, we barely got going. Bomber summoned his ace on the second turn, kind of the thing that ended up his deck that ended up wiping out Lua is now on the field, and Yusei is backed into a corner. The only other thing to touch on here in this episode was we got Saiga to come back, which was very cool, and he was doing the investigating that he promised Yusei to do, which was, hey, can you go check on my friends, like rallying them in Satellite? They were not there. He talked very briefly on a transmission to Yusei about it. Does that mean that they ran off because they just felt the situation wasn't safe, or is it something more sinister and Godwin has captured them? So guys, that's kind of my thoughts here on episode 20 of 5Ds. A little bit of a long legacy review this week, so if you've gone this far with me, about 45 minutes in, I greatly appreciate that. These come out usually each and every Thursday. Hopefully it'll be coming out on a Thursday when you listen to this. So I appreciate your love, support, everything when I do these reviews. They're a lot of fun for me to do, and it's great to talk to you guys all the time. I'll talk to you guys down below. Like the video, 30 Eastern Standard Time if you're interested in that. And if you're not, Dylan has videos every single week for you guys to check out. I will see you